Welcome to Business Basics by Megan Reese. In this lesson today, you're going to be taking notes as we go through this video. And you should have notes in one of two places. Either you have a printed sheet that looks like this. Okay, you may have this printed sheet where you're going to keep your notes. Or you may have this version that is on Google Slides. So you should have this and be filling this out as we go. Whether you are using the paper or using the computer, I want you to make it pretty. Okay, add backgrounds, insert pictures, or draw pictures and decorate it, make it look good, because I have found that one effective way of taking notes is to draw and use color. You'll find that when you go back to do the test, you'll be like, oh yeah, I remember because it was blue. Like sometimes, not everybody's brain thinks that way, but I know that mine does. And so sometimes when I draw a picture to explain something later on the test, I remember the picture and I remember the concept a little bit better. So the more you put into it, the better. So again, if you're drawing, great. Or if you're doing this, be sure to just, you can insert pictures right here and do search the web, and it'll do it right inside there. So you can do picture examples. And some of these are going to ask you to do images that show the concepts that we're learning. So make sure you are prepared with that. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about in Business Basics is defining business. So business is providing goods and services to customers with the goal of making money. That's it. That's what it is. It isn't about, helping others or social justice, and those are great things that some businesses choose to do, but ultimately a business has to make money or it's no longer going to stay in business. And so the number one goal is that I have to provide something that people want to get money back. And if I get a lot of money back and I'm making good money, then I can choose to do other things with it. But it's got to make money. Even the NFL is a business, and the NBA, they're a business. If they don't make money, they go out of business, right? So that's the definition of a business. So now we want to talk about the difference between goods and services. So goods are tangible products, something that you can touch, something physical. Everything around you is a good. Pretty much everything's a good except for people. Obviously, people are not goods. We should not be buying and trading and selling people. Okay, but the car you drive, the carpet you're walking on, the chair you're sitting on, the computer you're working on, the pencil you're using, whatever, those are all goods. And if you think about it, like, where did this come from? It comes from a store. Somebody produces that and sells it in bulk, and you can buy it from them, right? So goods are tangible products. So a little silly definition is something you can squeeze, okay? And then the actual definition is going to be something that's squeezable, okay? No, you cannot squeeze people. People are not goods. They are human resources, okay? They're in a completely different area, which we will be talking about later. All right, so that's your first half. Now on your other side, so those of you that are filling this out on the paper, it's a little more obvious, I think, in the PowerPoint or the Google slide, but this should be where you're doing goods, and this is where you do services. This is where you put your definition, and this is where you draw me lots of really cool pictures, okay? And you should have something similar in this. There's your definition, and you should add goods and services, draw me some pictures, or insert pictures to go with it. Okay, I'm not going to go through every single page, but just to kind of get you started. All right, so services, the textbook definition is intangible, something you can't touch. It's something people do for you. You pay someone to do that, either because you don't want to, or you don't know how, or you can't do it for yourself. Like a dentist may know how to pull a tooth, but they're going to hire someone to pull out their tooth because they can't pull out their own tooth, right? My guess is that most of you, any money that you have made on this side has probably come from a service. Maybe you've sold some goods, maybe, but most kids make money by performing a service. They babysit, they mow lawns, they take out the garbage, they do chores, they go help grandma, whatever. But usually it's a service where you start out. Okay? Okay, so something you can't squeeze. And so that's going to be our definition of services. Okay. So now we're moving on to human resources. There are three kinds of human resources. The definition of resources is items used to make goods and or services, okay? And now there's a lot of games out there that require you to gather resources. I'm a big board gamer and I'm a video gamer. I love to play games. And I love resource games where you have to, like, Settlers of Catan is a great example, where you have to, like, gather different types of resources, and with each resource you can make something else. So we use this term a lot. And in our economy, we have a certain number of resources that we have to learn how to handle them correctly in order to make our country work, okay? So the first one is stuff that makes stuff. So that's the first, that's the silly definition of resources. All right, so natural resources is everything contained on or in the earth or found in the sea. Okay? So it is something that was already here. If you remove all the people and everything, it's what started here in the first place. If you've ever seen the movie Wall-E, the whole point of that is that they no longer were getting natural resources because they kind of destroyed the earth. So they left, and when they only came back when things started to grow again, right? Because their natural resources had been depleted. We need to handle our natural resources really well because they are somewhat limited, right? Some more than others, but they are limited. And so natural resources, the silly definition of that is, let me go back here. So the silly definition of that is stuff that's just there, okay? So this is going to be water, oil, air, even, keeping our air clean, right? All the, whatever, grass, I don't know, trees, anything that was already here that's part of nature. And if you think about it, every product you look at, if you trace it back far enough, it started with nature. It started with something that was already here. And then we've modified it and modified it and modified it until it's what it is now. Okay, the second one is human resources. This is all people who work. If people are not working, they're not part of our human resources. That doesn't mean they're not humans, but they are not a resource because they are not providing a resource for our economy, okay? So like little kids are humans, but they are not human resources. We shouldn't be using them as human labor to do stuff for us, right? Because they're still kids. So the definition is people who do stuff, okay? So this can be everything from doctors, soldiers, teachers, even students. You guys, even though you're not technically working, you are still a resource to us. It's very important that we have students. So we have students in the system that are working and learning and getting ready to be employees. If everyone in our country decided they didn't want to work anymore, we would no longer have human resources. There wouldn't be anybody to make things or build things or grow things, right? We need to have people to make the world go around, right? And so if we have a large population of people unwilling to work or unable to work, that's going to be really difficult for our economy. All right, the third one is capital. The textbook definition is assets used to make goods or services. So you hear the word capital a lot. It's used in a lot of ways. Like you think of a capital city. That's not this one. Capital is also another word for money. Some people are like, oh, I don't have any capital to start a business. They mean I don't have enough money to start a business, right? But capital is a bigger word than just money. It's all the assets that a company might need or have, right? So the definition is stuff people make, okay? Stuff people make. So tools, money, cars, iPad, computer, buildings, machinery, factories, all the things I'm going to need in order to achieve what I want. So if I wanted to start a company, say I want to make widgets. Widgets is kind of a business word for unspecified product. Okay, I want to make widgets, so I need to hire people to come in and make the widgets. But I also need a building. I'm going to need factories. I'm going to need machines. I'm going to need all kinds of stuff, right? Those are all the capital, and that takes money, right? In order for me to gain all of that stuff, that's my capital, and it's generally stuff that can be sold for a profit. Okay, so if a company goes out of business and they liquidate everything, they sell all their capital to get cash for everything that they had, right? So in other words, it's when you add the two together. So natural resources plus human equals capital. Okay, if humans had never been on this earth and we just had an earth, it would still look the same. It would just be full of animals and look a lot better than it does now. But it would just be, we wouldn't have plastic and we wouldn't have chairs and we wouldn't have, anything that we make. We add humans to natural, they take the natural resources, they create something, and we gain capital, right? Okay, so that is the three types of resources, natural, human, and capital. Make sure you know the difference. Make sure you have written them into your document here, and you probably need to get a couple of pictures to show that you recognize what they mean. All right, next thing we're going to talk about is needs versus wants. So a need is something necessary or required for life, and a want is something unnecessary but desired. Now, this can be tricky because you got to think, okay, well, what's really a need? I mean, if we really pare this down, a need is going to be like food, water, safety, maybe like a shelter, right? But that's not if we do that, then there's not really a lot of products that are going to be a need. A need is more something that you look at and you think, well, I need that in order to function. I need that in order to accomplish my goal. It isn't necessarily something like, oh, I really, really want that. That would be so cool, right? So yes, a need can be like food and water, but it can also be like, I have to complete this class, and if I don't have a computer, I can't finish this class, right? Like that happened to me when I was in college. I had a summer class. I had to have a computer to complete this web design class. I needed a computer. I really did need one. I mean, am I going to die without it? No, but it was a need in order to complete my goal. Did I need, though, the greatest, most amazing, coolest computer with like the biggest graphics card and the biggest screen? And no, that would become a want, right? It's no longer a need now. Now it's just a want. So we're going to watch a little video about needs versus wants. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put a little button here. If you want to click on this right here, it will take you to YouTube where you can watch the video. I'm not going to put it inside here for copyright reasons, but you should be able to click on this button right now and it will take you to the video for this. Okay, the next concept you need to understand about economics is scarcity. Okay, the scarcity problem is that we have unlimited human wants, unlimited human needs, but limited resources. You know, like you ever think about, like, if you look at somebody like Bill Gates and you think he has, billions of dollars, and you're like, could I ever spend all of that? Is there ever come a point where I'm like, you know what? There's nothing left to buy. Even with billions of dollars, I bet you could spend it if you really wanted to, right? We can always find, and most people don't have billions of dollars. Most people have a limited amount of money. And so even though there's a million things you want, maybe you get $50 for your birthday and you're like, well, I want this and I want that. I want this game, but I also want that. And you have to sit there and decide because you know that your resources, your money is limited. And so this is a problem we have throughout the entire world is that we have a scarcity. There isn't necessarily enough mansions for every single person to live in a mansion. So how do we distribute that? How do we take all the resources we have in our area and decide who gets what? Okay, that's a scarcity problem. Okay, and that's just how it is. You've really seen this happen real time during the pandemic. If you remember the pandemic, which I hope you do because we're still in it, the pandemic really showed us where scarcities are. Just the other day I was talking to my nephew who works at Home Depot and he was saying, yeah, you can't get 2x4s right now. Can't get 2x4s. They're like super expensive. They've gone up in price, ridiculous. Or if you want a big flat sheet of wood, you can only buy so many and it's really expensive. And you're like, what? Like that's scarce? But the interest rates are down. People who are still working have a little bit of money and they're all doing home improvement projects. And so there just isn't enough made, right? So companies ordered what they thought they'd need, what they usually need, and then the pandemic kind of threw everything off, and we needed more, or we didn't need as much, and so we've got some scarcities. We definitely saw it with toilet paper, right? There was a huge toilet paper scarcity going on because nobody expected that we would all be at home and need toilet paper as much. Normally, half the time you go to the bathroom, you're at school or you're at work. And so now those places aren't providing toilet paper for you anymore, and you have to have your own that's made to be in a home, right? Not the big industrial rolls that you might see at work. So scarcity is a problem, and sometimes different things will happen that will upset it and make there be more scarcity in a certain area and maybe less scarcity in other areas. So I want you to think about how you experience scarcity in different areas of your life, okay? So we're going to break this down into 6 areas: individuals, families, schools, communities, businesses, and nations. In your PowerPoint, or in your Google slide, if you're doing that, it's right here. This is how you're going to fill it out. So this is already entered for you. I want you to define what scarcity is and then give me an example in your own life. Just type over the word example of how you have seen this scarcity in each of these areas. If you are doing it with the other sheet, it's also pretty obvious. You should be down here by now. And each of these are the different types. So you'll write the name and then put a definition right there, or an example of how you've seen it. So think of it first as an individual. What is something you personally do not have enough of? Something that you wish you had more of, but you don't have enough of. Okay, so money or time or friends or, whatever. But don't just say money as your example. Give me an example, a real example. Like one time this happened, okay? Tell me just a quick little, I needed this but couldn't because of this. Like what's a scarcity that you have suffered, okay? Then we got families. What's the scarcity in your family? What's the thing in your household that everybody fights over because there aren't enough of them? Everybody wants it. Maybe there's not enough computers, or there's not enough food, or there's not enough time with that, or there's not enough, I don't know, whatever. I was coming off the top of my head. But what is something that there's not enough of in your family, that there's a scarcity of, that you need to kind of figure out how to allocate it to each person in your family so that everybody gets an equal share or gets a turn or whatever. And think about that. What are you taking turns on in your family? What is it like? Oh, it's not your turn. How many times do we take turns with our siblings? Again, give me a specific example. Don't just say taking turns. I need to see a full example, like a sentence, okay? Then we got schools. So your schools are going to be, you know, what is something that a school doesn't have enough of? How do we make sure there's enough of what we need in a school situation? You can definitely see it during the pandemic. I know for me, I don't have enough wipes to wipe down my lab every day. That's for sure. We're running out of those really quick. Okay, there's a scarcity of that. So what is scarce in a school? What is scarce in a community? Maybe in the town that you live in, or even the county that you live in. What is there not enough of in your community that you need more of? In a business situation, what is something that businesses need more of? I don't have enough customers, or there's a scarcity of paper clips. I don't know. That's not a very good one. Don't use paper clips. But what is something that a business would be short on? And finally, nations. What is something we don't have enough of here in the United States or in the country you're in? What is something that you need more of in the country that there isn't enough of? That's a scarcity. And that's a big one. I mean, that's kind of when we think of scarcity, we generally think of it on a national level. Something we need more of that we don't have enough of, and then we're always coming up with legislation to try to redistribute our resources. For example, maybe there's not enough opportunity for poor kids to go to college, right? There's a scarcity of that. So we're going to rearrange our resources and create scholarships and programs that will try to correct that scarcity, right? Now don't use that example. Think of one of your own. Okay, so that's good. You need to pause the video, do that while you fill that out, because that might take you a minute. All right, because you have to deal with scarcity, you have to make choices. There is no way around it. Even Bill Gates, with his billions of dollars, has to make choices every day with what to do with his resources. Okay, so you have to make choices all the time. You know, you get that $50 for your birthday, and you have to say, okay, am I going to buy this or that? Am I going to save it, or am I going to buy that, that video game I wanted, or should I buy this other video game I wanted, or which one? And you're making those choices all the time. How should I spend my money? How should I spend my time? Those are your two greatest resources, right? Is your money and your time and your labor. How do I spend my labor? Where do I want to work? What's worth spending my time doing, right? So every choice you make has a consequence. They all have a consequence. And it doesn't matter what choice you make, there's going to be a consequence either way. And it's usually a naturally occurring consequence. It isn't something you can avoid. Okay, we often try to do that. We'd make laws that try to help us avoid consequences of our bad decisions. But that's not necessarily a good thing. We need to feel consequences for our decisions, or else we don't really learn from them. So consequences are valuable, but we need to recognize that they are there for a reason and that we need to learn from them. Okay, so each consequence is either a cost or a benefit. So every choice you make is going to have a cost and it's going to have a benefit. So for example, I decide to stay up late until 3 o'clock in the morning playing a video game on a school night. Okay, the benefit is I had a lot of fun and it was awesome, and I was laughing with my friends, and we had a really great time, and it was great. And maybe I made some great memories, or I got to a level I've never been to before, or something like that. That's your benefit. Your cost is that you're super tired the next day, right? And you don't pay attention in school, and maybe you miss an assignment, your mom gets mad at you. You guys make these you weigh this all the time, right? Like, what's the benefit versus the cost? And as you get older, you're supposed to get better at it, right? As you get older and wiser, you're supposed to get better at weighing costs and benefits and recognizing when the cost isn't worth it, right? That's why a 12-year-old will ride their bike off of the edge of a roof onto a trampoline thinking it's a great idea, but a 40-year-old is like, yeah, I've lived long enough to know that's a bad idea, okay? So you're supposed to, as you get older, it doesn't always happen, but you get better at recognizing what costs are worth the benefit, right? So a cost is what you have to give up, and a benefit is what you will receive, right? So again, weighing costs and benefits is something valuable that we need to do as individuals, but also as a nation, right? So going back to this for a minute, as we're going through like the pandemic, for example, as we make a decision whether to open or not, we have to weigh the costs and the benefits. What is the cost if we open versus the benefit? And that's been a huge issue right now because the benefit is that people can go back to work and the economy will get back started again and people will be able to support their families again. The cost is that people could die. People could get, we could have another outbreak, and a lot of people could get the disease and then die. And then the politician who said, go ahead and open is going to get blamed for it, right? So that's the cost and benefit. And that's really what politics is supposed to do, is measure cost and benefit. That's what we do every day as people as well. Okay. Opportunity cost is the cost of an alternative that must be foregone in order to pursue a certain action. Opportunity cost is one of the most important concepts in economics, and it is the thing that you didn't. So the opportunity cost is the thing you gave up. Okay, I remember when I was in college and we were studying this in my economics class, the example in my textbook was about Kobe Bryant. But we could say LeBron James, is the same story. LeBron James was offered NBA right out of high school. So he had to decide, do I go into the NBA or do I go and get a college education, right? He had to make a choice there, which I don't think they even let you do that anymore, right? I think now they won't recruit you out of high school because it's not a very fair thing to ask, right? To have to forego it. Maybe you really want a college education, forego it. But so he has to weigh the cost of that. And it can be actually numerically figured out. Like, okay, if I go to the NBA, I'll make this much a year. And if I go to college, I'm going to make this much. And what am I going to, I'm going to get a college degree, but I might not get a chance to play in the NBA. I could get injured and then I lost my chance, right? So that's opportunity cost. And LeBron James probably rightfully chose to go into the NBA at the cost of getting a college education. Now, if he'd broken his leg the first year and couldn't play again, then he took a risk, right? Because no one's going to give you a free scholarship when you can't play football or play basketball, right? So that's a risk he took, but he didn't get injured, and so it paid off for him, right? The opportunity cost was a college degree, which I don't know, maybe he went back and got one, I have no idea, but he, went straight to the NBA and immediately started making millions of dollars. The cost is also that he may have been a little young for that, to suddenly be making that much money. It can be a very difficult thing to go through, but you got to weigh that and decide, is it worth it? Do I blame LeBron James for choosing the NBA? No, I really don't. So we're going to watch a short video about opportunity cost. This one I'm just going to play right here in the video instead of having you click on it. So let's watch this from Investopedia.
Opportunity cost is what a person sacrifices when they choose one option over another. Tony is a sous chef at one of the best restaurants in the city. He earns a respectable salary of $50,000 a year. It's a good job, but he thinks he can do better. So he decides to start his own restaurant called Tony's Bistro. In the first year, he earns only 25% of what he made as a sous chef, or $12,500. The opportunity cost of starting his own business is the other 75% of the income that he would have made if he had stayed at his old job, or $37,500. Tony doesn't make too much for the first 4 years his restaurant is open, and his opportunity costs are high. He only earns $50,000 instead of the $200,000 he would have earned at his old job. So his opportunity cost is $150,000. Suddenly, in year 5, Tony's Bistro starts receiving rave reviews from food critics and earning top rankings from Zagat and Michelin. Business is booming, and he is making 5 times as much as he made at his old job, or $250,000 a year. He realizes that if he was still working as a sous chef, his opportunity cost would now be $200,000 a year. Although Tony sacrificed income and his opportunity cost was high in the short term, in the long run, his opportunity cost would have been higher if he had not opened his own restaurant.
So this example here says, Sergio is deciding whether to buy a car or a bike. What are his costs and benefits? So this is like a decision you're making. Should I buy a car? Should I get a bike? And then you can weigh that. Well, the cost of buying a car or getting a car is that I'm going to have a monthly payment. I got to repair it. I got to have gas. I didn't put it on here, but like insurance. It's much more expensive to have a car. Not as good for the environment. But I'm going to be able to get where I need to go very, very quickly. And it's very much more convenient for me. So those are my benefits and my costs. With a bike, I can save a lot of money, right? It's more good for my body. I'll be physically active. But it's going to take more time to get where I need to go. And it could take a physical toll on me. I could be really tired and sweaty when I get to work or whatever. So you sit there and you weigh the costs and the benefits. So if I buy a car, or let's say I buy a bike, I have foregone my opportunity cost is the speed at which I would have gotten to work if I'd gotten that car, right? So I've lost, it's what I lost in order to get what I picked. Okay, and in the example of the video, he made the decision to go out on his own and he lost that income and ultimately it helped him out. And it can be a mathematical problem where you're like, I could make this much money, I could make, $10,000 a year while I'm going to college, but then when I graduate, I'm going to be making $80,000 a year. And I can do the benefits, or I can do this other job and make $40,000 a year without college and just stick with 40 every year. And eventually it's going to be, the benefit will be better that you went to school. In that particular case. So you decide how economics affects you, and it is something that does affect you every day as a citizen in the nation, as a member of a community, as a member of a family, and in your own personal life. You have to decide, what are your scarcities, what are my resources, what is the best way to allocate those resources fairly, and how does this economy work, so that you understand politics, you understand your own family, and you understand the world. As far as your assignment goes, make sure that you have filled this out entirely, that you've added cute little pictures. This should say opportunity cost. This is cost and benefits. Hopefully you caught that. So make sure you filled this out. You should be able to just type right inside to get it to say what you want. And there should be lots of pictures. You can add a background, change the background, add some background to it to make it look interesting. And you can go ahead and submit that. Or if you've been doing this the other way, make sure that you've colored it in and filled it in with all the stuff that we've talked about. So that's your assignment, and hopefully you've learned something about economics, and we thank you so much for joining me.